Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the healthcare panel. I'm Tracy Wut. I head up the M&A team at Baker McKenzie in Hong Kong, China. I'm very honored today to have a panel of very distinguished speakers with me. To my immediate left here, it's Simone Song, founder and senior partner of ORI Capital. And to the far left is Bosun. He's the managing director and co-head of private investments of Tybourne Capital. Joining us from Shanghai in quarantine is Alex Chafaran-Kloff. I think Alex is a well-known figure in the healthcare sector here. He is founder and CEO of In Silico Medicine. So I actually would like each of our speakers to just do a very quick intro, about I think themselves briefly, and and about actually their firms, and organizations. So maybe starting with you, Simone.
Thank you, Tracy. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Simone Song. I'm the founder of ORI Capital and also a senior partner at ORI Healthcare Funds. ORI Healthcare Funds are VC funds focusing on investing innovative healthcare companies globally. And our disease focus are the large ones, cancer, acute chronic disease conditions, and also neurodegenerative related diseases. Our focus modality will be therapeutics, drug delivery, and diagnostics. And our investment strategy is to combine quantitative analysis with fundamental research. So by saying that's why we call ourselves a quantamental manager, quantamental being the part that we have developed an in-house big data-driven AI research platform. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thanks, Simone. And Alex, is it okay? We'll start with you then next, before going to Bosun. A quick intro.
Yes, sure. So my name is Alex. My name is Alex Chafaran-Kloff, and I'm the founder and CEO of a company called In Silico Medicine. So this company is a Hong Kong-based company. We are global. We focus on AI-powered drug discovery. So that's where we use computational approaches to identify new targets in a variety of diseases. We generate novel chemical matter, novel drugs with the desired properties, and we predict clinical trials outcomes. So recently we've managed to demonstrate that we can set new records in both biomarker development and target discovery and generation of small molecules, so going end-to-end. And to my knowledge, we're the first company on record to discover the new target using AI, generate small molecules using AI, and take it all the way into IND-enabling studies. So we are very hopeful to go into humans sometime within the next very short foreseeable future.
Thanks. And lastly, Bosun.
Yeah, sure. I'm Bosun. I'm a managing director with Tybourne Capital. We're a multi-sector strategy hedge fund that does growth equity investments in both public and private markets. Sectors we cover are healthcare, TMT, consumer, financials, some industrials. I wear two hats at the firm. I lead our private equity business. We started doing that about 3 years ago. We've raised two dedicated pools of capital to make growth equity investments, primarily in three of those verticals. It's healthcare, broadly all subsectors, enterprise SaaS, and also fintech. We do invest mostly in the region, mainly in Asia, but we do have an office in San Francisco, so we are global investors. Pleased to be here and excited to join the rest of the esteemed panelists here.
Thank you. So, and this question is directed actually to, the entire panel. COVID has transformed the industry. It creates a lot of opportunities for companies and investors to drive, healthcare through innovation. So, I'd like to hear from actually each, of the panelists, given that your different focus, are there specific, whether it's for pharmaceuticals, therapeutic classes, or medtech and services that that you see investors are now chasing, and what do you think are the key trends in the next 12 months or so? And if it's okay, maybe starting again with Simone first.
Hello. I think the most overwhelming impact technology-wise, healthcare technology-wise, we see is on RNA technologies. We're not just talking about mRNA technology, which is used to develop COVID vaccines. We're talking about all kinds of RNA technology. For example, the mRNA and circular RNA, they're both used to allow your body to in vivo develop genes, therefore translating to a wanted protein. So that's mRNA, circular RNA. And we also look at RNAi, which is interference RNA, and also silencing RNA and RNA siRNA. They're both used the other way around. They're both used to allow your body to in vivo disrupt a gene, disrupt an unwanted protein to be translated. And we also look at RNA editing technology, which can do both, which can allow or disallow. So that's the biggest impact following COVID, because RNA technology has been there for years and years, but it's being quickly brought in, it's quickly being unearthed with the success of COVID vaccine. In terms of what diseases that RNA therapeutics can treat is quite large. It goes from cancer to chronic conditions, heart attack, strokes, and also a lot of rare diseases. And also we all see used to stop an epidemic. So when we talk about advancement made in RNA technology, we have to mention the leap forward in the DNA space, especially in DNA editing. We all heard about CRISPR-9, but now it has advanced very quickly from 9 to X to 3, basically allowing single base pair editing. One example, in the treatment of high cholesterol, we used to have to take tablets every day. But when PCSK9 gene is knocked out, one treatment can be done for life. That's the type of impact it has. So when we talk about RNA and DNA, we have to talk about gene therapy in general, which is mostly used to treat rare genetic disorders. Although rare, but can be very, very life-threatening, can be lethal. The big advancement, the big leap forward in this sector is to use non-viral delivery. Instead of using AAV, using lentivirus, now it's use lipid nanoparticle, the non-viral delivery method. So we move from gene therapy, we have to look at the more traditional ways to generate therapeutics, which is the protein way, monoclonal antibody, we all know. But now the leap forward is also happening in this field. We're not talking about the monoclonal antibodies, we're looking at biospecific or trial-specific, meaning an antibody that can recognize two antigens at the same time carrying a T cell or NK cell engager. So these are all big changes, but there are more. When we talk about a protein, we can also think about how to use oncolytic virus, to treat cancer by jump-starting patients' own immune systems. So that's one of the pillars in the very important Immuno Oncology approach to treat cancer. Now, when we talk about Immuno Oncology, we have to talk about the CAR T therapy. Basically, given a T cell artificial receptors to go after the cancer cells, and it's very successful in liquid. Now it's moving to treat solid cancer. So all these are happening with AI, with AlphaFold that can predict 80% above or more protein 3D structuring. I think innovations in healthcare will surprise us all at a speed we haven't seen before. Thank you.
Thank you. And Bosun, what about you? What do you see?
Yeah, look, I share the sentiment that Simone just shared. I think in some ways we're probably in this third kind of golden age of biotech. If you thought small molecules was one, large proteins, antibodies was second. But third, yeah, no, and look, it's cell. She mentioned cell therapy, gene editing. I mean, I think the ability to now target, identify with genetic sequencing, and the ability to deliver specifically and how to knock down genes or upregulate. It's fascinating, and we can now start to think about cures with gene therapy and even gene editing, when previously it was just treating the symptoms of disease and illness. But if I'll maybe shed on two things. I mean, we could probably just talk the entire panel about really new innovations and new technologies that are going to improve healthcare, because it's super exciting. I think one of the things I think we should think about too is if you look geographically. So I think Simone and I, and then Alex also as well, we operate on a global basis. And so when I think about healthcare as an opportunity, and what are the areas that can be addressed or fixed, or what can you create businesses out of that ultimately become investment opportunities for us, going into the US, which has a very different healthcare infrastructure, in some ways, I think it's incredibly complex, probably inefficient in so many ways. The opportunities there could be very, very different, even on the drug side, medical device side, versus, let's say, here where we're sitting in Asia, because it's here. There's a dearth of healthcare infrastructure, dearth of physicians. Even basic, illnesses aren't addressed here. So when we think about opportunities, you just kind of have to think about it in the context of the geography. Usually, if I'm looking at the U.S., I tend to over-index on some of these highly, highly innovative, drug therapies that Simone was talking about. But even just in this region, the ability to deliver even basic, pediatric care in Southeast Asia could be very, very intriguing. Or leveraging, telemedicine or digital health in a way that, when you're speaking to a patient, let's say in a rural community, which doesn't have access, in mainland China, can't get to the tier 1, 2, 3 hospital, their only option is maybe to access care through a digital platform for their child that's sick at 2 a.m. That's a very, very high utility, probably, service that could be provided. The last thing I'll just mention, so again, I think thinking about the geography and the opportunity set and the utility or the clinical needs that exist, I think is really important. What I'll say next is actually providing a little bit of a segue to Alex, but I think the confluence of healthcare and technology is really going to be driving the next, I don't know how many decades of innovation. And Alex will be talking about, AI drug discovery. And, he focuses across all those modalities we talked about, but he's looking at small molecules that have been around for decades, has the ability to do others, but, introducing technology to that, a medium, a chemistry that's been around for decades, 100 years, and we now can interrogate and access or identify new receptors or new uses of molecules that we've known for decades, active ingredients. Fascinating, because we don't have to recreate the wheel then. We can take what we've already known. In some instances, we're creating new things, but in some instances, we can say, look, this existing compound that we know works for one disease, or maybe it failed in a clinical trial previously. There are ways to look at it with different angles using big data, right? And now enhanced computing power, and I won't get into the jargon about it, but it's fascinating. But even things, so that's AI drug discovery. Alex will talk about it, but there's also things like AI diagnostics. We spend a time looking, at things where just the vast amount of information that's being created, let's say through imaging, and the ability to apply machine learning to that and artificial intelligence, speaks to, look, can you start to capture what ultimately is pattern recognition that, let's say, a radiologist or a pathologist develops over many, many decades of looking at these scans and being able to identify and say, well, this is a cancer, this is the beginning of a cancer, it's an illness. But you know what? Machines actually, in theory, could do that better. And so this is really interesting on how we can start to think about how technology will start to separate and think about, look, in the event that machines can do something better, it frees up time where human capital and insight can be applied to other problems, other issues where at the end of the day a machine can't do it, but you need that human insight and intuition and critical thinking and problem solving. And that's really exciting to me, because now humans can focus on what we can do best, and we can leave the methodical pattern recognition stuff to AI and machines. So that's just a snapshot of really exciting stuff that's happening, and I've only this is a fraction of the surface.
Yeah, and in fact, I think almost in not just healthcare, but almost in every industry, the theme of convergence, technology, in the sector, it's just prevalent. Actually, maybe over to Alex. Tell us a bit more how I think I expect you to be talking about AI, and technology, how it's driving I think your growth. So over to you, Alex, please.
So, of course, I would like to resonate with the previous speakers, with Bosun and Tracy. So I think that COVID dramatically transformed our industry beyond recognition, primarily because it also brought the attention to the sector. And there are many more people now who are switching careers even from IT into biomedicine, just because they now believe that this is a worthy cause. And of course, this pandemic also brought the speed and the financing to companies in our sector in AI-powered drug discovery. So pretty much every company which was around at the time when pandemic started switched into COVID-based programs, and actually in many areas progressed. So both the investor community and the regulators and the employees recognized that what this segment of the industry was doing was the right thing to do. I don't want to speak specifically about in silico, but just talk about the industry in general. But it basically elevated the many companies in this field to the place where that they deserve. Internally, if you look at how AI-powered companies invest in COVID-related projects, they primarily go after either the very well-known protein targets within COVID, right? So many of those targets are known. So if you know how to drug them, you can advance the molecules to the clinic pretty quickly. And one of those targets is C3-like protease, is the protein which is responsible for viral replication. So multiple groups, including ours, started working on C3-like protease very early, and now are in advanced stages of preclinical work, because it still takes a lot of time to do in vivo testing and prepare the molecules for human IND. And it really increased the attention on multiple other viral proteins that are addressable with small molecules, like spike protein and many others. Another approach is to improve the human immune response and modulate human immune response. So you're looking for specific targets that could be modulated using also primarily small molecules in order to improve the immune response and reduce the cytokine storm and also modulate the immune system into the right direction, so to improve the survival rates of the patients. Another area which got highlighted is aging. So I'm deeply passionate about aging research myself. I actually don't care about any other forms of biology. I'm very interested in those longitudinal changes that transpire during our lifetime that technically degrade us and lead to death and many diseases. And COVID was one of the main drivers for people to understand that aging plays a huge part in survival of COVID patients. So if you look at the infection rates, at the survival rates, at mortality rates, kids do not really get COVID and they survive. They do not even go to the hospitals. But people over 65, the older they get, the worse the prognosis. So you get very low survival rates in people over 80. So that is due to immune senescence. And if you identify ways to improve the immune system and reverse some of the age-associated changes, that would not only help the COVID patients, but also would help the society as a whole, because we definitely need to figure out how to improve healthy, productive longevity and compress morbidity. So those are grand challenges, and those grand challenges were highlighted. Those grand challenges are being addressed by the many companies, including ours. And the level of investment in this field has increased. Again, many new people are coming into the field, and many university professors started multiple small startups that now are gaining prominence because they have addressed some small critical technology that people needed, but that were overlooked. And we are, looking to collaborate with those. Sometimes even thinking about doing something bigger. And I think that the entire industry has benefited from this pandemic. Also, remote work. So companies that are truly global and have distributed infrastructure, distributed human resources, actually benefited because now they've started working much more efficiently. And you've got new ways to coordinate labor force. You have new ways to collaborate. You have new ways to accelerate research in pretty much unprecedented ways. So I think that this industry has seen nothing yet. So we are going to see major growth going forward. What is unfortunate is that, again, none of those companies and none of the biotechnology or pharma companies have demonstrated the ability to go after a cure for COVID rapidly. So it's been 2 years into the pandemic, and there is no drug that is effectively treating the disease. So that shows you the inefficiency of our industry and shows you that there is a lot to be done.
Alex, turning to a different topic. I mean, this morning, I understand, a group, of aspiring, entrepreneurs were, competing, for a prize. And I actually want the panelists here to tell us actually, what would be the tips actually, like you would give, to aspiring biotech, healthcare, life sciences, entrepreneurs, or would be entrepreneurs here. I actually like to start with Alex. Alex, you have a lot of international experience, but you have chosen Hong Kong, to be headquarters of in Silico. Actually, why Hong Kong? Can you share that with the audience?
Well, sure. Well, first of all, I love China. So I think that the future of the biomedical sciences and the pharmaceutical industry is in this region, primarily because it resembles the early 2000s in information technology. You've got a lot of contract research organizations that can very rapidly, very quickly perform the experiments that we need to be able to validate the AI. So you've probably heard about those phrases, designed in California, made in China in early 2000s, and all the companies who followed that approach actually benefited, grew, and accelerated dramatically. So now with the growth of the China's biotechnology industry, and specifically the CROs, you can now operate at supersonic speed. You can do multiple experiments in parallel. You can do very complex experiments, and the quality of the labor now in China is beyond any imagination. So we've got really amazing scientists who can do high quality work. And the next step is innovative biotechnology. So with the government's focus on innovation, on delivering innovative drugs, and also suppressing the margins on generics and drugs that have low level of innovation, it really drives the pharmaceutical companies towards innovation. And Hong Kong is a very special region of China, which allows people like me who do not really speak Chinese to feel at home. And it's great international city, great financial hub. It's starting to think about building the biotechnology ecosystem, and it's just great place to live. So I think that I surveyed 7 different regions and cities where I wanted to live myself, and Hong Kong came on the top, just because it's such a small, beautiful place where you can hike on the same day and do a lot of business on the same day, especially for in an extremely busy entrepreneur's life. That compact ecosystem where you can do everything in one day is truly amazing. It's right next door to mainland, which is currently the big driver of biomedical innovation. Of course, we do have a very substantial site in Shanghai, and we love every region of China. So we also have a site in Taipei, and that's why I am in quarantine here, because next 2 months I'll be spending in Shanghai. And once the border is open up, Hong Kong allows you to go to Shenzhen in 7 minutes by train. So it's in right proximity to mainland, and it's a huge transportation hub. You can also go to the UK or New York very easily. It's great airport, great transportation ecosystem, and lots of friendly, good talent.
Thanks. And someone who's born and raised here, and really proud to hear that. Thanks, Alex. And turning, now to Simone and Bosun, and from an investor, point of view, what tips actually can you give, to companies, biotech or medtech, companies that are looking for funding? What actually will make them attractive, to investors like yourself? Simone, is that okay, starting with you?
Sure. So as an investor, I receive proposals all the time. I think my first piece of advice is to understand how much time I have for each proposal. So it has to be right on the point. Don't waste pages of introductions of how the corporate development is. That will cause the proposal to go to the trash. So share my passion. If you want to send something to me, check me out on my website. So the mission of Ori Healthcare Fund is to be financially successful and to be socially impactful. So we focus on three very large diseases. If there's a fit, then start your proposal by telling me what is the unmet need you have discovered. Number one, talk about something meaningful. What is the unmet need, big or small? Secondly, what you can do to bridge the need, to bridge the gap. Then talk about, executions. So very simple. That's the logic flow I want to see. That basically tells me what your mission is. So in healthcare, it has to be save people's lives. So that's the number one tip I have. The number two tip I have is also, because I'm speaking to an audience of people who live in Hong Kong. I consider myself a Hong Konger as well. I started living in Hong Kong in 1995. So when I'm offshore, when I'm in London or in China or in wherever I am, I don't miss Shanghainese food. I was born and raised in Shanghai. I would miss wanton mee, Ngao Lan mee. So I'm a Hong Konger. So I want my second tip to be addressed to people who want to create a difference sitting in Hong Kong in healthcare. Now, technologies don't become products automatically. It takes discovery and takes translation. So a clinical development. If you start early, if you start with discovery, when you do discovery, you have to bear in mind that this is not a science. You're not a bench scientist. you are discovering something for the purpose of taking it into human. So you need to prepare yourself ready for the transformation to become, a lab scientist to a discovery scientist. And that's number 2 tips. And Hong Kong, we have so many great schools, and you look at the resume of the faculties. These are all Ivy League in the case of their ex-career in the US or Europe. So I do believe there are enough technologies that can be discovered and can be translated later on. But the first step is to discover. When you discover for the purpose of for a regulatory approval down the road. When you have this mindset, it's much easier to talk to a venture capitalist. It only takes one Alibaba and one Tencent to create 2 gigantic industries. And I think it would take a few Alex to start the drug discovery sector. And it take one leaguer to come up with a CDMO, right? So it would take probably a few Alex in Hong Kong and maybe a few Simone to start doing something new. That's my number 2 tips. Number 3 is being in Hong Kong, all the advantages are there. We have very fertile land for technology to be discovered and later to be translated. I'm sure I have no problem in recruiting talents in Hong Kong. We have, even our head of legal has a PhD from Yuan Guoyong, Professor Yuan Guoyong. And we have former PhDs who are very specialized in certain scientific approaches to treat cancer or neurodegeneratives. We have no problem in recruiting talents. So should you. So shouldn't you have any difficulties. But aside from that, we plug deeply both globally and into China. China has gone from supplying inexpensive labor to very, very skillful young scientists and engineers. If you look at our field, look at the healthcare field, just this year, starting from last year, in fact, August last year, just within August last year and this year, landmark deals are being created, and the trend is being recognized that global farmers, large, medium, small, are knocking on the doors of Chinese innovative pharma for early stage assets to be out-licensed for their global ex-China rights. For example, Beijing just concluded a deal with a large pharma with upfront payment of 650 million. And IMAB, a small, young, not mean, when I say young, not being disrespectful, being young in terms of age and very innovative, concluded a deal with AbbVie with an upfront of 180 million. And one of the largest specs globally this year is called a young company, only 3 years old, incorporated in the US, called EQRX. This company has created our industry's biggest spec, $1.2 billion. What is the business model? In licensing approved chemical oncology drug from Hansen. The lady boss was the wife of Han Rui, of course. You can see the trend is being recognized that China is not only, being in Hong Kong, you have all the advantage I said earlier. You have early technology to be discovered, to be translated. By plugging to China, it could speed up the discovery and the development process. So whether you can see how many head of the research centers established in Zhangjiang, but not only in Zhangjiang, elsewhere as well. And even with COVID, the Zoom is there, team is there. Learn to be international by being Hong Kong, by being part of China, and looking into the globe.
Thanks. Actually, picking up the point about being global, and Bosun, you touched briefly upon that point as well. That healthcare is actually a global business. So maybe in particular on that point, any tips and maybe even success stories like among your portfolio companies that you can share.
Yeah, sure. Well, I'm glad Simone mentioned EQRX. We're early private investors in that company. So, look, I think the tips that I have, I do want to reiterate, I think, Simone's first question about or answer is just, look, understand the unmet need or product market fit. What are you doing to solve it? Why are you best positioned to do it? And the money that we're giving you, or you're raising, like, what is that going to accomplish? What are the use of proceeds? And why are you the best team for us to back? Second would be, look, be ready to be discouraged because it can be a long process, and you're going to get a lot of no's. That's just the nature of this business. But realize that you just need to, in many cases, find one or two investors that believe in you, and that's how you get a start. But there's going to be a lot of no's. There's going to be a lot of discouraging conversations along the way. There's going to be a lot of these frustrations. You'll leave a meeting saying, look, that person had no idea, doesn't understand. And you're actually probably right, because at the end of the day, the chances are many of your businesses, you're the smartest person in the room that knows the best about your business. The person on the other side, even if he or she claims she's an expert, chances are they're more generalists than they really are expert. There's some exceptions to that. So just make sure you just need one or two investors to believe in you, and that's how you get your start. Along the lines of what you were saying, Tracy, I think this goes along the lines of like leveraging resources globally. There's no need to recreate the wheel. Oftentimes we encounter, especially in healthcare, but I see this across all the sectors I invest in, this kind of pride of authorship, ownership. We've got to create it in-house because that's the best way to do it. But I think if you change your mindset and think about your business model should be, how do we get there the fastest? How do we leverage the expertise of others, the community, the network, to help us get us there sooner? That's going to be more highly valued in this day and age where things move so quickly because of technology. First mover advantage, getting to market, even with candidly, a suboptimal product, suboptimal service, it pays dividends. And because you're there first, you get the recognition, you're recognized as a leader, and you can iterate from there. You don't have to be perfect that first time out. Every business is iterative. Every entrepreneur would tell you that. But on global, so look, specifically going back to healthcare and biotech, I mean, one of the investments that we made in our portfolio, kind of the first investments we did was, if you think about especially drug development, biotechnology, look, everyone's seen, unless you've been under a rock lately, a lot of the regulatory challenges that have come up, particularly within China. I won't go into the reasons of rationale, politics, or whatever, why that's happening. But what I do think is, of all the sectors, and I look at not just healthcare, but I look at a multitude of ones, healthcare on balance is probably the most, I think, protected and still area amongst all the categories, simply because it is truly global. And look, innovation in healthcare drug development comes from every region. And look, today as it stands, and I agree with Simone's comment that there's going to be best-in-class, first-in-class innovation that is coming out of China now, and it will start to increase. However, no geography, whether it's the US, China, Europe, is going to be solving all of the issues and illnesses that humanity faces. So the reality of it is, it has to be global, because that person who's solving non-small cell lung cancer could be residing in the US, but in China they could be solving psoriasis, and in Europe it could be solving some other inflammatory disease. And what that means, though, is it means there has to be global collaboration. So one of the investment themes that we're doing at Tybourne is, because we have strong relationships that exist both in the West and now in Asia, we're trying to find how we can assist that collaboration, whether it's East going West, West going East. And so Simone mentioned EQRX. That was a business which is on the forefront of taking technology from China and moving it to the West. They're probably one of the first to have done it, along with some other multinationals. But the other trend, and probably more prevalent, is actually taking technology, licensing China rights, and bringing those assets into China for development. And it's not just for accessing the market. People think about China as a market opportunity, but you have to think in many cases the market opportunity, because of the regulatory timelines, can take very, very long. So it may be 5, 6, 7 years before you see that first dollar of sales in China. But what a US company or a European company may be very interested in doing in China is accessing capital, but accessing patients, and maybe exploring new indications like cancers that are more prevalent in China. And what does that mean for the global development program of, let's say, this US-based company? It allows them to get to market faster. What did I say earlier? Think about your business model and how you can get to market the fastest. Getting to market first, 12 months sooner, 18 months sooner, in a drug category, if you do the net present value of that for a multi-billion-dollar drug, it's a major value creator for that company. So we've done that, and a lot of our companies that we're exploring.
Thank you, Bosun. I have more questions, but unfortunately, we're running out of time. I'd like to thank, my panelists, Alex, Simone, and Bosun, for an insightful comments. Thanks, all for attending this, panel. Thank you.